New Mexico's highest court is being asked to intervene in a simmering dispute over the defunding of the McKinley County District Attorney's Office. Albuquerque Mayor Tim Keller vetoed 4 items in Albuquerque's newly approved $1.5 billion budget, citing them as technical corrections that would raise legal concerns if left unaddressed. The United States Supreme Court on Wednesday restarted plans to temporarily store nuclear waste at sites in rural Texas and New Mexico. Albuquerque Regional Economic Alliance President and CEO Danielle Casey is set to depart the organization in August to take over the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance. And the Santa Fe Opera, in conjunction with the Rio Metro Regional Transit District, is launching a late-night train service on Saturdays during the opera's 2025 summer season. From the Albuquerque Journal, this is the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. It's Thursday, June 19th, and we'll have more on those stories, plus a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast on the other side of this break.
This episode is brought to you by the Kirtland Partnership Committee. For 30 years, we've been dedicated to supporting, growing, and preserving the Kirtland National Security Complex. We work tirelessly to enhance military readiness, foster community partnerships, improve quality of life, and promote economic development right here in New Mexico. Join us in our mission to ensure that Kirtland remains a cornerstone of national security and a key provider of quality jobs and investment for all of Greater Albuquerque. Together, we can make a powerful impact. Kirtland Partnership Committee, proudly shaping the future of our national security for 30 years.
New Mexico's highest court is being asked to intervene in a simmering dispute over the defunding of the McKinley County District Attorney's Office. With more on this story, we now turn to the Journal's Capitol Bureau Chief Dan Boyd. Dan, thank you as always for joining me. You've been covering this saga since it initially started during the legislative session, but for our listeners who might not be too familiar with what's going on, can you kind of fill us in on the backstory here?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting situation. I know a few years ago, defund the police was kind of a common slogan, and in this case, it's kind of defund the prosecutor. But this came about during this year's legislative session. There was some concerns about the district attorney in McKinley County and just kind of her rate of prosecuting cases. She's acknowledged that it's been hard to kind of hire and retain attorneys in the Gallup area. So kind of given that backdrop, the budget bill, once it was moving through in the Senate, Senator George Munoz, who's the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, made the decision to kind of basically strip out all the funding in the budget for this office and instead kind of assign it to the DA in Farmington and have him basically pick up all the cases in Gallup. So that's kind of the backdrop. This budget now is supposed to take effect here July 1st, so only a couple weeks away. And the district attorney in McKinley County, she filed this lawsuit with the Supreme Court, basically said that this decision by the legislature and signed by the governor kind of takes away her rights as an elected official, and kind of violates the separation of powers agreement. So it'll be kind of a unique case to see whether the Supreme Court does in fact take this up and what then they might ultimately rule.
And Dan, these are some pretty serious allegations that are being levied against the district attorney, obviously so serious to the point where her funding is now at risk. Has she mentioned any way that she could kind of right the ship here?
Yeah, so the DA, Bernadine Martin, she said she's approached the Farmington district attorney, Jack Fortner, and kind of offered to enter into an MOU with him that would kind of allow, have him kind of forward the funding that he's receiving under this budget bill so she can still pay, the staff and the attorneys in her office, things like that. She said, according to her, she said he's kind of rejected this offer. I haven't been able to reach, the Farmington district attorney for comment, but she's raised concern in her lawsuit that this could lead to the furloughing of employees in her office. In addition to attorneys, there's obviously a lot of investigators, victim advocates, kind of administrative staff, people like that who are kind of, in the balance. I mean, it's a serious situation and not knowing exactly how this is going to play out in 2 weeks and who's going to be handling, DUI cases, homicide cases, pretty serious cases in McKinley County, which is a county that has seen fairly high crime rates in recent years.
And Dan, as you mentioned earlier, Senator George Munoz is really the catalyst for this funding being shifted. He's a Democrat. He represents the Gallup area. And in your story, he mentions that he's really defending this decision and thinks they should move forward with the defunding.
Yeah, I've talked to him a few times, and he's really said that he kind of viewed this as a last resort, that he, kind of looked at other ways or tried to kind of work with the DA, has expressed frustration about this before. And he said a lot of judges, even the state chief public defender, kind of approached him with concerns about what was happening in McKinley County. And he said, this was the only way that he could really see to kind of address the situation. He said that, he felt compelled as a legislator to do this shift and, that he's not lost any sleep about it, that he thinks this is the right way to make sure that cases are prosecuted and do move forward in McKinley County.
And Dan, the petition that the DA has filed really includes a lot of top profile officials, the governor, the lieutenant governor, several lawmakers. So what is she she really seeking for the Supreme Court to do here?
Yeah, no, that's kind of the most important question here. She's basically asking the Supreme Court to intervene and say that what the legislature did and what the governor signed off on in the budget bill was unconstitutional, and asking them to kind of restore her previous funding that's been in place for this current fiscal year, and to block this defunding from taking place. The big question now is, it's up to the Supreme Court to decide if they want to, in fact, intervene, if they want to hold oral arguments in this case. And if they do, I think, there need to be a resolution here pretty quickly. We're looking at the budget taking effect on July 1st, which is, as I said earlier, only 2 weeks away. So I would think that there is some urgency here to try to get this figured out. And I've talked to some law enforcement in McKinley County, and they said everyone's kind of holding their breath, kind of waiting to see what happens.
So it should be interesting to see how the next chapter of this saga plays out. Dan, thank you so much for sharing the latest with us.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
In other headlines from the newsroom, in a tragic case that shook Albuquerque, 2 men were sentenced to life in prison plus 46 years each for a 2023 drive-by shooting that left an 11-year-old boy dead and his teenage cousin paralyzed. On September 6, 2023, Tatiana Villegas and her 11-year-old cousin Froylan and his mother were driving home after a Reno Aces Isotopes game when more than a dozen bullets tore through their truck near Avente Cesar Chavez Southeast. Froylan was killed instantly by a gunshot to the head, and Tatiana, then 17, was hit in the spine and left paralyzed. This seemingly random act of violence turned out to be a tragic case of mistaken identity. Prosecutors said Nathan Garley, 22, and Jose Angel Romero, 24, believed the Villegas family's pickup truck belonged to a gang rival. Garley reportedly stood up through the sunroof and fired 16 rounds from a rifle. The case stirred public outrage and led Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham to declare gun violence a public health emergency. She then imposed a temporary ban on the public carrying of firearms in Bernalillo County. In February 2024, Garley and Romero were convicted of first-degree murder and 8 other felonies, including conspiracy, aggravated battery, and shooting from a vehicle. This week, both men were sentenced to life in prison, which carries a mandatory minimum of 30 years plus 46 years. Garley also faces an additional 20 years from a prior federal drug conviction. At the sentencing, Tatiana Villegas gave an emotional statement from her wheelchair and condemned Romero for smirking during the hearing. Assistant District Attorney Lawrence Hansen told jurors that Garley and Romero, enraged by a prior altercation at the ballpark, orchestrated what he called a, quote, hunting party and attacked the wrong vehicle. Albuquerque Mayor Tim Keller vetoed 4 items in the city's newly approved $1.5 billion budget, citing legal and procedural concerns, though the city council ultimately overturned 2 of these vetoes during a contentious Monday night meeting. While Keller's vetoes did not drastically alter the overall budget, which funds hundreds of programs and salaries across the city, it did spark concern and debate among the councilors. Keller described the budget as one of the most significant policy decisions the city makes annually, reflecting its priorities and future vision. One of Keller's vetoes blocked the creation of an independent permitting office, which had been allocated $450,000. While Keller said he supports the goal of streamlining the city's permitting process, he argued that establishing a new independent office would be legally problematic. Instead, the money will stay with the planning department, and the council passed a separate resolution to improve permitting by hiring an ombudsman and exploring third-party reviews. Another veto removed $200,000 from the Albuquerque Regional Economic Alliance, or AREA, which is a nonprofit that assists businesses that are looking to expand to Albuquerque. Keller said allocating these funds would force the city to cut support from other nonprofits, effectively, quote, picking winners and losers. Councilors pushed back, saying the funding for AREA does not harm other organizations and is necessary to maintain the city's economic development contract with the group. The council chose to override Keller's vetoes on 2 other items. One was $350,000 earmarked for the Cycling USAC Masters Championship, a race Albuquerque is not currently scheduled to host. While the mayor's administration said the funding was inappropriate, the council overrode the veto, allowing the money to be reallocated elsewhere. The final veto involved $580,000 for Bands of Enchantment, a music TV series that is filmed at historic Chemo Theater and airs on KNME. Keller said the allocation might violate the city's procurement ordinance and the state's anti-donation clause. However, the council again disagreed and overrode the veto, letting the funding proceed. The mayor mayor's office noted that all 4 issues could have been resolved before the council's original budget vote, but said they weren't given the opportunity to do so. The United States Supreme Court on Wednesday cleared the way for temporary nuclear waste storage facilities in rural Texas and New Mexico, reversing a lower court ruling that had blocked the projects. In a 6-3 decision, the justices ruled that Texas and a landowner forfeited their rights to challenge the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's license approvals, removing a major procedural obstacle. The decision revised plans for facilities that could store spent nuclear fuel for up to 40 years, with possible extensions. The Texas site, operated by Interim Storage Partners, could take in 5,500 tons of fuel rods and millions of tons of radioactive waste. A similar facility is planned in southeastern New Mexico, licensed to Holtec International. While the court did not rule on whether such storage is legal under federal law, it signaled support for the NRC's longstanding interpretation. However, opposition remains strong, with both New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham and Texas Governor Greg Abbott opposing the facilities, citing safety concerns and the lack of a permanent national disposal solution. Danielle Casey, who's the president and CEO of the Albuquerque Regional Economic Alliance, or AREA, will leave the organization on August 1st to lead the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance, beginning her new role on August 25th. AREA announced that Senior Vice President Chad Matheson will step in as interim CEO while national search is conducted for her permanent replacement. During her 5-year tender, Casey helped rebrand the organization from the Albuquerque Economic Development Incorporated and transitioned it into a 501c3 nonprofit. She also led the development of a new strategic plan and governance structure, positioning AREA as a key player in regional economic development. AREA board members praised Casey's leadership and expressed confidence in Matheson to maintain the momentum during the transition. And the Santa Fe Opera is partnering with the Rio Metro Regional Transit District to launch a Saturday late-night train service during its 2025 summer season, running from June 28th to August 23rd. The new service includes a $25 round-trip ticket that covers both Rail Runner train fare and a shuttle to and from the Santa Fe Opera House. The shuttle will depart from the Santa Fe Depot and return its patrons to the station after each performance, departing 15 minutes after the show ends. The train will wait until all opera goers are accounted for, ensuring nobody gets left behind. The initiative, called, quote, Summer Nights in Santa Fe, is open to anyone spending a late evening in the city, not just opera attendees. Return trains to Albuquerque will typically leave between 11 p.m. and 12:30 a.m., with some shows expected to push departures to 1 a.m. Santa Fe Opera leaders say the goal is to make performances more accessible and hope to continue the partnership in future seasons. The leading news is powered by the journalism of the Albuquerque Journal. If you enjoy all of the stories we share with you here daily, please consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Journal by utilizing the discount code in our show notes. Each subscription helps support local journalism and allows us to provide you with the news that matters to you. Now taking a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast. Today you can expect a widespread haze after 12 p.m., sunny with a high near 101 degrees. As for this evening, partly cloudy skies are expected with a low around 71. To keep up with all the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal, you can visit our website at abqjournal.com. That's the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. We'll be back tomorrow.